Hello again and welcome to another reflection from the Manse. As you know, over the last couple of weeks we've been looking at the Psalms, and this week I'd like to look at Psalm 8. But before we begin, a short prayer. Lord, be with us during these reflections. May your Spirit guide our thoughts, challenge our hearts, and lift up our spirits to you. Amen. Let me read Psalm 8. O Yahweh, our Lord. Now, I'm translated that Yahweh. I suppose you'd better know it as Jehovah, but that's the covenant name for Israel. O Yahweh, our Lord, how glorious is your name in all the earth. Your majesty is praised high as the heavens. Out of the mouths of infants and babes, you have rebuked the mighty, silencing enmity and vengeance, to teach your foes a lesson. When I look at the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars set in place by you, what are humans that you should remember them, mortals that you should care for them? Yet you have made them a little less than the heavenly beings, crowning them with glory and honour. You have made them rulers over all your creatures and put everything under their feet, all flocks and herds and beasts of the field, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea, and all that swim in the ocean. O Yahweh, our Lord, how glorious is your name in all the earth. Now, as we go through this week, I want to unpack this psalm almost verse by verse. But today is just a wee introduction. I want us to remember that the book of Psalms is not just a song book. It's a prayer book as well. These words don't have to be sung. They can be read and meditated on bit by bit, because they're full of subjects and emotions that cover the whole range of human concern, and certainly the limits of the faith as we wrestle with it. This book of Psalms was well known to Jesus. He quotes it a lot. The book of Psalms was also quoted in the New Testament by many of the New Testament writers. And someone described the gospel as a psalm-soaked gospel. The Christian gospel is a psalm-soaked gospel. Isn't that wonderful? So a lot of the motifs and the sentiments and the attitudes and the teaching and the subject matter of the Psalms is found in the Christian gospel. So we're dealing with really good stuff here. Now, a question mark. The Psalms were written a long time ago. This is an ancient faith, the ancient faith of Israel. What else got to do with us today in the 21st century? An ancient faith for a modern world? Really? Oh yes. Because there are many philosophies and attitudes going about in the modern world that are ancient too. In some ways there is nothing new under the sun. Things are just repackaged. Let me give you an example. There's a philosopher called Epicurus, a Greek philosopher. And he believed that life was about the pursuit of pleasure. Now, I'll qualify that in a minute. But firstly, Epicurus didn't have a lot of time for religion. He didn't know I think he himself didn't believe that God existed, or the gods, because it was the gods plural in his day. But even if they did, they were irrelevant to human life. So whether they existed or not, no big deal. We have to make our own way in the world and get on with it. And for him, life was about the pursuit of pleasure. Now, I qualify that by saying it wasn't about indulgence and over extravagance, because Epicurus was wise enough to realise that that can be destructive and corruptive of living a good life. But nonetheless, it was to make the best of this life and to try and get as much out of it as we can. Does that sound familiar in our modern world? So in so many ways, we live in modern times, but there's an awful lot of beliefs and attitudes and worldviews that are very old. So it's not just this ancient faith of Israel that is something we could question in our modern world. We could question all our attitudes and beliefs, and that's what we should do. It was a Greek philosopher, Socrates, who said that unexamined life is not worth living. Isn't that good? The unexamined life is not worth living. In other words, Socrates saw people around him who were just going from day to day, muddling through life, rather than asking, who am I? What am I about? What matters in life? The unexamined life is not worth living. I think we could sum up some of the challenge of Jesus by saying that the unexamined faith is not worth having. So I'd like to think that we would reflect on some of this great teaching that we're going through in the Psalms and ask, how does this affect us today? Do we have a living faith? Now we've got to remember that from the Bible's point of view, praise and prayer were often an act of protest and rebellion against what was going on at the time. It's still true for us today. This faith of ours, reflected in the scriptures, is often the voice from the margins. It's the voice of those who were the outsiders, sometimes the voice of the oppressed. So the Bible is dynamite. It's a counter-cultural message. It was in its time, it has been throughout history, and it certainly is for us today. So it's exciting to think about that. This is a voice of protest and rebellion against a lot that's going on in our world. But it actually is a voice of challenge to us in the church. Are we listening to the power of this ancient faith that is still modern and contemporary and relevant for us today? So as we unpack this psalm, please remember that we're dealing with things that matter for us in the here and the now. Thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow, and God be with you.